In March 2016, the sound of sirens pierced through the crisp Portland evening as emergency vehicles converged on Riverside High School. Inside the school's gymnasium, illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights, lay the body of 18-year-old Evelyn Thompson, her cheerleading uniform stained crimson. The investigation that followed would uncover a dark story of obsession, betrayal, and fatal attraction, beginning in the fall of 2015 at Riverside High School. A series of events would unfold that would spiral into jealousy, betrayal, and ultimately a night of devastating violence. To understand how this tragedy came to be, we must go back 6 months earlier, when a seemingly perfect life began its descent into darkness. Austin Jose had always been the kind of man people gravitated toward. At just 29 years old, his charm and natural ability to connect with others made him a perfect fit for his role as the new soccer coach at Riverside High School. His players admired him not just for his skills, but for how he seemed to truly care about their development on and off the field. Austin wasn't just their coach, he was their mentor, a figure they could look up to. Austin's personal life seemed just as perfect as his professional one. He had recently married Linda, his childhood friend turned lover, in a beautiful ceremony in June 2014. The two had grown up in the same Portland neighborhood, sharing everything from school projects to late-night conversations under the stars. Over time, their deep bond blossomed into romance, and by the time they were in college, it was clear they were meant to be together. Linda, now an art therapist at Portland Children's Hospital, was known throughout the medical community for her gentle demeanor and her remarkable ability to help children heal through art. Together, they had just moved into a cozy craftsman-style home in Portland's historic district. The house wasn't large, but it was full of possibilities. Space for a nursery, a backyard for a swing set, and a future filled with the kind of love and warmth that Austin and Linda had envisioned since they were teenagers. For Austin, the transition to married life was both exciting and challenging. Balancing the demands of his new job and his commitment to Linda required more energy than he had anticipated. Linda, ever supportive, encouraged him to pour his passion into his coaching, assuring him that they would always find time for each other. They spent weekends decorating their home and talking about their plans for the future. Linda even started collecting baby names, carefully jotting them down in a small notebook she kept by the bed. Evelyn Thompson, meanwhile, was living a very different life. At 17 years old, she was the star cheerleader of Riverside High School. Her stunning looks and outgoing personality made her the center of attention wherever she went, but behind her radiant smile was a girl desperate for love and stability. Evelyn had grown up in a sprawling mansion in Portland's West Hills, where wealth and privilege masked a home devoid of genuine affection. Her father, consumed by his real estate empire, was rarely home, and her mother found solace in social events and prescription medications rather than motherhood. The emptiness of their massive house echoed the emptiness in Evelyn's heart. The first day of the school year buzzed with energy as students filed into the hallways, eager to claim their territory for another year. The Riverside High Gymnasium, a sprawling space with polished wooden floors and championship banners draped from the rafters, was alive with anticipation. Among the new faces was Austin Jose, the young, charismatic soccer coach, making his way toward the field. To his players, he was a fresh start, a coach who believed in teamwork, discipline, and character. Austin was quick to establish his presence, addressing the team with a blend of authority and enthusiasm that earned their respect almost instantly. For the rest of the school, however, he was just another adult in the faculty, someone to admire from afar or gossip about in the lunchroom. For Evelyn Thompson, though, he was something else entirely. The first time Evelyn noticed Austin, it wasn't during soccer practice, but during a pep rally. Standing off to the side of the gym, clipboard in hand, he observed the event with a mix of professional detachment and quiet pride. Evelyn, front and center with her squad, executed every move with precision, her dazzling smile lighting up the room. But it wasn't the roar of the crowd or the rhythm of the music that captured her attention. It was the way Austin clapped politely, his gaze steady and unwavering. To anyone else, it might have seemed like a fleeting moment, but to Evelyn, it was something more. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn began to orchestrate her moves carefully. A casual wave in the hallway here, a perfectly timed, accidental run-in near the field there. She made sure to stay just on the right side of propriety, knowing that overt attention would only scare him off. And Austin, ever the professional, took little notice of her calculated efforts, chalking them up to the enthusiasm of a spirited student. What Evelyn saw as a connection, Austin saw as nothing more than a coach's duty to be kind and approachable. He had no way of knowing the depth of her infatuation, nor the lengths she would go to nurture it. Outside of school, Evelyn's fixation began to take on a life of its own. She scoured the internet for every piece of information about Austin she could find. College photos, articles about his soccer career, even his wedding announcement. She saved his picture as her phone's background, the image of him and Linda smiling radiantly at their wedding, etched into her mind like a cruel reminder of what she couldn't have. Her world, already fragile, began to revolve around him entirely. Meanwhile, Austin and Linda's life carried on, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. They spent their evenings painting the nursery a soft sage green and debating names for their unborn child. Austin's workload was intense, but Linda's unwavering support kept him grounded. "You're doing great," Linda would say as she handed him a plate of reheated dinner after another long day at practice. "You're the real MVP," he'd reply with a grin, kissing her on the forehead. They were happy, or so it seemed. By October, Evelyn's obsession had begun to creep into the open. Her grades started to slip, her once effervescent personality dulled by the constant churn of her inner turmoil. She became territorial, glaring at other girls who dared to linger near Austin after practice. Still, she managed to keep up appearances well enough that no one, not even Austin, suspected how deep her infatuation ran. But the cracks in her facade were growing, and it was only a matter of time before they shattered completely. The cool November air carried a sense of victory as Riverside High's soccer team pushed toward the state semifinals. It was late one evening, just after a grueling practice, when Evelyn lingered in the gym for the first time. She sat alone on the bleachers, the faint hum of the gym lights accentuating the emptiness around her. Austin noticed her as he was locking up for the night. "Evelyn, it's getting late. Shouldn't you be home?" he called out. She looked up, startled, then smiled faintly. "I just needed a quiet place to think," she replied. Her voice was soft, almost fragile, and it disarmed him. That night in early November marked the beginning of a pattern. Evelyn started showing up more often after practice, always with an excuse, studying for a test, waiting for a ride, or needing to stretch. To Austin, it seemed harmless, even kind to let her stay. But to Evelyn, these quiet evenings became the highlight of her days. By mid-November, Evelyn's vulnerability began to draw Austin in deeper. One chilly evening, she sat on the edge of the bleachers, her face buried in her hands. "Everything okay?" Austin asked as he approached. She hesitated, then looked up with tears in her eyes. "It's just my parents. They don't care about anything I do. I told them we made it to state, and they didn't even pretend to be proud." Austin sighed, sitting beside her. "That's tough, Evelyn. I'm sorry you're dealing with that." Her lip trembled as she whispered, "It's nice to have someone who listens." It was a genuine moment, one Austin didn't think much of at the time. But for Evelyn, it planted the seed of something deeper. The championship game on November 20th, 2015 was one of the most thrilling moments in Riverside High's history. The gym erupted in cheers as the soccer team clinched an overtime victory, and Austin was hailed as the hero who transformed the team. Evelyn stood on the sidelines, her eyes never leaving him. Later that night, long after the crowd had dispersed, Austin remained in the gym, soaking in the moment. Evelyn appeared, still in her cheerleading uniform. "You must be so proud," she said softly, stepping closer. "I am," he admitted, smiling. "The boys worked hard for this." "You worked hard for this," she corrected, her voice low and steady. "You're amazing, coach." Before he could respond, she reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. The moment felt charged in a way Austin didn't expect. He told himself it was nothing, but when her lips brushed against his, he didn't pull away. For a fleeting moment, he gave in. When he finally broke the kiss, the weight of what he'd done was immediate and crushing. By December, their stolen moments had become routine. Evelyn found reasons to meet him in the gym after hours, and Austin, despite his guilt, struggled to push her away. She had a way of making him feel needed, of making him forget the mounting guilt that shadowed him whenever he returned home to Linda. One evening, Evelyn showed up unannounced, visibly upset. "I saw you talking to Miss Anderson after practice," she said, her voice sharp. Austin frowned. "She's a colleague, Evelyn. That's all." "I don't like it," she said, her tone softening as she moved closer. "I don't want to share you." Her words unsettled him. He realized then just how possessive she was becoming, and it terrified him. On December 20th, 2015, Austin made an attempt to end things. The gym was quiet, the holiday break just days away, and he stood pacing while Evelyn watched from the bleachers. "This has to stop," he said finally, his voice heavy. Evelyn's face crumpled. "You don't mean that." "I do," he said, his tone firm. "Evelyn, this is wrong. I'm married and I love my wife." Her expression shifted, tears replaced by a defiant glare. "You didn't seem to care about that when you kissed me," she shot back. He winced, guilt slicing through him. "That was a mistake. It's over." Evelyn didn't respond. She simply stood, grabbed her bag, and walked out of the gym, the sound of the door slamming echoing behind her. On Christmas Eve, the warmth of the holidays did little to ease Austin's mind. Linda, radiant in her maternity sweater, leaned into him as they sat by the fire, wrapping gifts for their unborn child. "You've been quiet lately," she said, her hand resting on his knee. "Just tired," he replied, forcing a smile. In that moment, Austin made a silent promise to himself. He would make things right. He had no idea that Evelyn's obsession would make it impossible for him to keep that vow. The year began with a sense of renewal for Austin and Linda. On January 5th, 2016, during a mid-year school event celebrating Riverside High's athletic achievements, Linda made a surprise appearance. She wore a flowing dress that didn't quite hide her growing belly, and her radiant smile lit up the gym as she approached Austin. "Austin and I have some exciting news," she announced to a small gathering of staff and close friends. "We're expecting a little one in June." Applause and congratulations filled the room. Austin wrapped his arm around her, feeling a fleeting moment of hope that their life could return to the simplicity and joy they once knew. From the corner of the gym, however, Evelyn stood frozen, her face a mask of barely contained fury as she watched the couple bask in their happiness. By mid-January, Evelyn's behavior took a darker turn. On a chilly Friday evening, Linda prepared dinner at home while Austin worked late at the gym. Unbeknownst to her, Evelyn had managed to slip into their backyard earlier that day. Linda noticed nothing unusual until she took a sip of her chamomile tea and immediately gagged. The taste was metallic, bitter. She called Austin, her voice trembling. "Something's wrong with the tea. It tastes poisoned." Austin rushed home, his mind racing. He dismissed Linda's suggestion that it might have been deliberate, but unease settled in his chest. That night, as he held Linda in his arms, he resolved to find out who could have tampered with their home. On January 28th, tragedy struck. Linda collapsed at work, clutching her abdomen in pain. At the hospital, Austin learned the devastating news. She had lost the baby. The doctors were kind but clinical, explaining that such complications could happen for a variety of reasons. Linda was inconsolable, and Austin's world crumbled around him. As he sat by her hospital bed, Austin's mind replayed every interaction with Evelyn over the past few months. The poisoned tea, her increasingly erratic texts, her obsession with being close to him. A chilling thought took hold. Had Evelyn done something to harm Linda? February arrived with a biting cold that mirrored the growing tension in Austin's life. Evelyn's fixation on the gym deepened. She would show up unannounced, claiming she needed help with cheer routines or simply wanting to chat. Austin tried to keep his distance, but she was relentless, always finding reasons to pull him back into her orbit. One evening, as he locked up, Evelyn appeared out of the shadows. "This place is ours, you know," she said, her voice low and intense. Austin turned to her, his patience fraying. "Evelyn, you need to stop this. It's not healthy." Her expression hardened. "You don't get it, do you? This is where it all started. This is our space. No one else gets to take it from me." On February 14th, Linda decided to visit Austin at work, hoping to rekindle some normalcy after their shared loss. She walked into the gym with a thermos of coffee, catching Austin by surprise. "I thought you could use a break," she said with a gentle smile. Evelyn was in the far corner, wiping down gym equipment. The sight of Linda standing in the gym, the place Evelyn had claimed as her own, sent her into a quiet rage. She left abruptly, but not before shooting Linda a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Later that night, Austin received a text from Evelyn. "She doesn't belong there. You know that." Austin's fear of Evelyn's instability grew with each passing day. He began checking the locks on their doors twice before bed, refusing to let Linda walk alone to her car after work. But no matter how hard he tried to protect her, Evelyn's shadow seemed to loom everywhere. By February 25th, Austin was at his breaking point. Evelyn's texts were relentless, veering between desperate pleas and veiled threats. She began showing up at random places, his favorite coffee shop, the grocery store, always with the same intense look in her eyes. "Coach," she said one morning as he walked into the gym, "we need to talk." "No, Evelyn," he said firmly. "We've talked enough. This ends now." Her eyes flashed with anger. "It doesn't end until I say it does." Austin turned away, his heart pounding. He had underestimated just how far Evelyn was willing to go to hold on to her fantasy. The night of March 3rd, 2016 began like any other for Austin Jose. After a long day of practice and meetings, he lingered in the gym, going over strategies for the upcoming spring soccer season. The gym, with its polished floors and rows of empty bleachers, had always felt like a second home to him. Unbeknownst to him, Linda had decided to pay him a surprise visit. It had been weeks since she'd seen him unwind, and she thought a quiet moment together might be just what they needed. She arrived at the gym carrying a small paper bag with dinner, her footsteps echoing softly as she entered through the side door. "Austin?" she called, her voice warm and familiar. He looked up from his clipboard, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Hey, what are you doing here?" "I figured you could use some company," she replied, setting the bag down on the bench. "Thought we could have a mini date night." Austin smiled, grateful for her thoughtfulness. They sat together on the bleachers, sharing a quiet meal under the gym's fluorescent lights. For the first time in months, the weight of their struggles seemed to lift, if only for a moment. As the clock ticked past 8 p.m., Evelyn Thompson stood outside the gym, watching through the glass panel doors. She had been following Austin's schedule closely, hoping to find a moment when he was alone. But the sight of Linda inside, laughing, leaning close to him, sent a wave of fury crashing over her. The gym had always been hers and Austin's sanctuary, their private space. Seeing Linda there felt like a betrayal, an invasion. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the handle of the small handgun she had taken from her father's office earlier that day. Inside, Linda leaned her head on Austin's shoulder, her voice soft. "I miss this. Just us." "Me too," Austin admitted, wrapping an arm around her. The moment felt fragile, like a sliver of light in the darkness they had been navigating. The crash of the gym doors slamming open shattered the peace. Evelyn stormed in, her cheerleading jacket thrown over her shoulders and the gun clutched tightly in her hands. "Austin!" she screamed, her voice cracking with emotion. Linda jolted upright, her eyes widening in shock as she saw the weapon. Austin instinctively stepped in front of her, his arms raised. "Evelyn, put the gun down," he said, his voice steady but firm. "You lied to me," Evelyn cried, tears streaming down her face. "You said she didn't matter. You said this place was ours." Linda's voice trembled. "Evelyn, please, shut up," Evelyn yelled, her gaze darting between them. The gun wavered in her hand, but her grip remained firm. Austin took a cautious step forward, his hands still raised. "Evelyn, listen to me. Whatever you think this is, it's not worth it. Just put the gun down and we'll talk." "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore," she shouted, her voice breaking. "You made me feel special. You made me think I mattered, and then you threw me away like I was nothing." "Evelyn, that's not true," Austin said, his heart pounding. "You do matter, but this isn't the way to fix anything." For a moment, Evelyn hesitated, her grip loosening slightly. But then her gaze shifted to Linda, who stood frozen behind Austin, and the fury reignited. "You don't deserve him," Evelyn hissed, pointing the gun toward Linda. What happened next unfolded in a blur. Austin lunged forward, grabbing for the gun. Evelyn screamed, struggling against him as they wrestled for control. The weapon discharged, the deafening crack echoing through the gym. When the struggle ended, Evelyn stumbled backward, her hands clutching her stomach. Blood seeped through her cheerleading uniform, staining the fabric a deep crimson. She looked at Austin, her expression shifting from shock to a heartbreaking realization. "I just wanted you to care," she whispered, her voice barely audible as she sank to the floor. Austin knelt beside her, pressing his hands against the wound in a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding. "Evelyn, stay with me," he pleaded, his voice shaking. Linda called 911, her trembling hands struggling to dial as tears streamed down her face. The sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Evelyn's breathing grew shallow, her gaze locked on Austin. "I didn't mean for it to end like this," she murmured before her eyes fluttered shut. By the time the paramedics arrived, the gym was eerily silent, save for the faint hum of the overhead lights. Evelyn Thompson was gone. The night of March 3rd, 2016, marked the beginning of a storm that would engulf the lives of everyone involved. By the time the police arrived at Riverside High, the gym had transformed into a scene of chaos. Officers cordoned off the area, EMTs worked to confirm what everyone already knew, and Austin sat on the bleachers, his hands trembling, stained with blood. Linda stayed close to him, her face pale and tear-streaked, clutching a blanket an officer had draped over her shoulders. In the days following the tragedy, the Portland Police Department launched a full investigation into the events of that night. The media descended on Riverside High, reporters digging into every aspect of Evelyn Thompson's life and Austin Josie's role in it. Detectives interviewed staff, students, and the Jose's, piecing together a narrative that was both shocking and deeply unsettling. The revelation of Austin and Evelyn's affair sent shockwaves through the community. Though Austin admitted his guilt during questioning, he maintained that Evelyn's death was an accident, a tragic consequence of a desperate attempt to protect Linda. By late March, Austin faced charges of involuntary manslaughter. The courtroom became a battleground, with Evelyn's parents demanding justice for their daughter, and Austin's defense arguing his actions were those of a man trying to save his wife. Linda attended every hearing, standing by Austin even as the details of his betrayal became public. Though devastated, she believed him when he said he never intended for things to spiral this far. The trial was swift, given the evidence of Evelyn's obsession and the circumstances surrounding her death. In early May, Austin received a sentence of probation and mandatory counseling, a leniency that divided public opinion. The students and staff at Riverside High were left grappling with the aftermath of the tragedy. Evelyn's death became a haunting reminder of the hidden struggles and secrets that can fester beneath the surface. The gym, once a place of victory and celebration, now felt heavy with the weight of what had occurred there. Evelyn's cheer squad left flowers and handwritten notes by the gym doors, creating a makeshift memorial. "We miss you, Evelyn," one note read. "You didn't deserve this." The school administration quietly worked to distance themselves from the scandal, but whispers lingered in the hallways. Students speculated about the affair, the motives, and what could have been done to prevent it all. By June 2016, the full extent of Austin and Evelyn's relationship became public knowledge. Evelyn's parents, devastated by the revelations, launched a civil suit against Austin for emotional damages. Though the case was eventually settled out of court, it cemented Austin's fall from grace. Austin resigned from his position at Riverside High, unable to face the lingering stares and judgment. His career in coaching, once so full of promise, was effectively over. As the summer heat bore down on Portland, Linda made a decision that had been weighing on her for months. "I can't keep living like this," she told Austin one evening. "I love you, but I need to heal, and I can't do that with all of this around me." In July 2016, Linda filed for separation. She moved out of their shared home and into an apartment closer to her work. Though they remained in contact, their marriage never recovered. Riverside High and the surrounding community struggled to reconcile the tragedy. Some viewed Evelyn as a victim of neglect and manipulation, while others saw her as a troubled young woman who made devastating choices. The gym, now a symbol of both triumph and tragedy, became a silent memorial. The school eventually installed a plaque near the entrance, inscribed with the words, "In memory of Evelyn Thompson. May we always strive to see the struggles of those around us. In the years that followed, the events of March 3rd, 2016 became the subject of documentaries, true crime podcasts, and endless debates. Evelyn's story became a cautionary tale, one that highlighted the dangers of obsession, the price of betrayal, and the devastating ripple effects of a single night's choices. For Austin, the gym remained a place he couldn't return to, a space forever tied to his darkest moments. But for those who knew Evelyn, it remained a place to remember the vibrant, complicated girl whose life ended far too soon.